This episode is brought to you by State Farm. Listening to this podcast? Smart move. Being financially savvy? Smart move. Another smart move? Having State Farm help you create a competitive price when you choose to bundle home and auto. Bundling, just another way to save with the personal price plan. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. Prices are based on rating plans that vary by state. Coverage options are selected by the customer. Availability, amount of discounts and savings, and eligibility vary by state.
On December 12th, Disney Plus invites you to go behind the scenes with Taylor Swift in an exclusive 6-episode docuseries.
I wanted to give something to the fans that they didn't expect.
The only thing left is to close the book.
The end of an era. And don't miss Taylor Swift, The Eras Tour, the final show, featuring for the first time the Tortured Poets Department. Streaming December 12th, only on Disney Plus.
Unfiltered discussions. Unexpected guests. No topic is off limits, from sex and relationships to the human condition, personal anxieties, and so much more. The only talk show of its kind in the world. This is The Last Show with David Cooper.
Hello, happy hump day. Welcome to The Last Show. You'll learn a lot on tonight's program. Here are some of the topics we'll cover. Do you remember when movies and TV shows had real dogs, horses, even the occasional bear stealing scenes from humans? Now our furry friends are all pixels. Did CGI eat Lassie? In 10 minutes time, we'll ask, are animal actors going extinct or just being rendered? Then the results are in, based on a scientific study. When is the appropriate time to stop eating before bed? Midnight stackers, you'll want to brace yourself. It's not in the order of minutes, it's in the order of hours. That later in the hour. Those are some of the topics we'll hit on the night show. There will be more, you will learn more, but for now, as ever, let's dive in. On the internet, newspaper websites, when they introduced user comments, that promised a productive global conversation, right? Well, sometimes those comments feel like someone is throwing a chair in the first 5 seconds. They can get ugly, they can get angry, and it turns out the earliest people to comment on a thread might actually be the angriest. I'm here with someone who has researched just this. He is a communication studies professor at the University of Gothenburg in Sweden. His name is Ben Clarke. Ben, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
So you looked at a large number of online comments, some many millions. What instincts did you have going in about what the angry, rude, hateful comments might be?
Yeah, absolutely. We looked at 38 million comments on The Guardian's website, The Guardian from the UK. We had an instinct, based on reading a lot of academic literature, that it might be the case that people who responded quickly in the comment sections, both to the news article overall and to the other comments that were presented in response to the article, that those ones might contain more of the hateful stuff. So we ran a big analysis of this, 38 million comments, including 1 million comments that The Guardian took away, the most hateful stuff, basically. What we found was, statistically significantly, the comments that came earlier on, both in response to the news article overall and in response to other commenters, was more likely to be hateful, basically. So quicker comments, greater increased risk of as hateful content being there.
Well, did that surprise you that the first few comments that showed up were in fact the most angry, the most hateful?
I suppose not. So we had this hypothesis going in that it might be like this, based on quite a diverse literature. There are some things in the psychology literature which would suggest when we see red, we might need to curb our tongue or bite our tongue, so that we don't come out with the worst stuff which might pop up to our mind when we're angry or when we meet a particularly disagreeable comment. So we have this hypothesis it might be like this. And I mean, kind of in our common language, right, we talk about the fact that you should hold your breath, take a deep breath, count to 10, all these kind of things, which reflect that, often when we faced with something we disagree with strongly, what might happen if we respond quickly is perhaps not the most productive thing we could come out with.
Now, can the first comment being hateful, can that be sort of a tone setter for the entire conversation that goes on after that? Is that like me showing up to a dinner party, saying something hateful, angry, and then the whole night the conversation becomes that?
Somewhat, yeah. So this was another thing that we tested for in our analysis, and we found what was called like an incivility contagion effect. So if one of the comment threads contains something hateful, it increases the chance that further comments will be hateful. And the more that happens, like the increased risk that more hateful comments will come in the same thread. And time is still a factor. So when that happens, increasingly so, the comments come quicker and quicker and quicker.
I'm kind of fascinated, but also kind of horrified by this idea that hate can travel faster than calm, reflective commenting. Is that a technology problem? Is that a psychology problem? Is that wrong with us? Like, is this human?
It is human, I think. So one thing that should probably stress about the analysis is there were a lot of different commenters who were doing this, right? So there's a lot of people who are commenting quickly and coming out with pretty bad stuff. We have to assume it's the stuff that The Guardian got rid of. And it wasn't just a few users. There were tens of thousands of users who were doing this. So we think it is a bit about the human psychology, right? If we don't bite our tongue, if we don't take a moment to pause and reflect, it's likely that we'll come out with stuff which is less productive, including potentially hateful. But I think it's also a technology problem, clearly. We have many communication technologies now, which, increasingly it's about speed, it's about efficiency. And I mean, in many respects, that's good. It helps us to do a lot of things. It helps us to navigate the complex world that we live in an effective way. But I think there are also some downsides of this. It means that, we're not encouraged to bite our tongue or to take a moment to reflect and pause on what it is that we want to say, or why we might find a comment disagreeable, and we kind of like just fall into loud screams and perhaps not the most productive thing. So I think it's a little bit both of the human psychology, but also how we design comment forums. This is definitely an aspect of the problem.
I don't consider The Guardian a particularly polarized media outlet, but there are many out there, especially here in North America. On those, the comments get even wilder, I find, especially when they're unmoderated. Is there a way we can use technology to get people to cool off? Like, I don't know, I've been on the platform Reddit, and it sometimes says, hey, you've commented too much, you got to wait 10 minutes. Or maybe like some sort of CAPTCHA image where the user has to prove they're not a robot, but that process might take 30 seconds. Side note, not having bots comment might also be a good thing. I'm not sure where that enters the conversation. But what I'm asking, is there a cooling period we can enforce users to have? And if we do, they might be less hateful?
I mean, we could. Yeah, definitely we could. So the thing you mentioned actually with CAPTCHAs is interesting. We've been experimenting with exactly that after this study where we found these results. So we've designed a couple of experiments with some of our students of finding ways to slow people down in comments forums. We've just constructed our own and done these kind of small-scale experimental studies. And we've used CAPTCHAs in one of them to try to slow people down for this kind of duration of maybe 10, 20 seconds. Kind of at the moment, we're getting mixed results, right? So it seems to get rid of the worst things, though it's difficult experimentally to induce hate for lots of reasons, including ethical ones. But in terms of like improving the comment quality, we don't see that right now. I think the form is a big one. CAPTCHAs annoy people, and that sort of makes sense. What you mentioned with Reddit is interesting. Yeah, I know they do that. And I think that points to the fact that we could have systems that slow people down and design digital spaces in that way. But the thing that rubs up against that slightly is for many of these big social media organizations or media organizations like The Guardian, they want engagement, right? And if people are slowed down, there's a risk that they lose people to their sites. So I think we have to think, what do we really want? And I would assume, and like the conversation we're having now, and like you've expressed, there are a lot of people out there which would actually rather have a productive conversation and have moments for pause, right? That's a small cost to pay, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, philosophically, comments online are supposed to create this democratic conversation, but in reality, hateful stuff gets amplified. Hateful stuff, it seems like it gets posted first, which can then set the tone for the whole thing. And there's this perverse incentive. These outlets, maybe not The Guardian specifically, but these outlets want the engagement. They want the clicks. That's advertising money. Comment sections online, from everything you've learned, are they what they're supposed to be? Are they this democratic forum for, healthy debate, or do they end up being kind of a cesspool?
Yeah, I think there's nothing in them which is inherently, either good or either bad. They're just another means for us to communicate, right? So there's nothing that's per se better or worse than, say, having a face-to-face conversation. It's really all down to how we design them. So if we design them in a way that means we put the emphasis on reflection and we encourage people actually to spend more time there, but not only saying the worst stuff, right? But actually, contemplating what it is that they're doing. We could design slow tech. There's lots of kind of like slow food movements. We could easily have slow tech in this way where we do have more democratic debates. So I think there's nothing negative in having online discussions. They could have that promise. Of course, that promise hasn't really played out since this kind of early internet optimism, but it could be that way if we decide to design our online spaces that way.
Well, Ben, it has been a joy talking to you about your research. Thanks for going over internet comments with me. I appreciate your time.
Thanks very much.
Ben Clarke is a communication studies professor at the University of Gothenburg in Sweden. After the break, why are animal actors disappearing from Hollywood, replaced by CGI creatures and motion capture suits? The surprising future of animals on film sets is coming up.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
My day kicks off with a refreshing Celsius energy drink, then straight to the gym. Pre-K pickup, back home to meal prep. Time for my fire station shift. One more Celsius, gotta keep the lights on. When the 3-alarm hits, I'm ready. Celsius. Live, fit, go. Grab a cold, refreshing Celsius at your local retailer or locate now at Celsius.com.
For those who know that questioning everything includes questioning this show's existence. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Hollywood, TV, and movies, they used to rely on scene-stealing dogs, heroic horses, the occasional bear, and definitely monkeys. These animals were in and they acted with humans. But in the age of CGI, are animal actors becoming extinct? That is the question we're about to answer here with media and culture studies professor at the College of Staten Island, CUNY in New York, Cynthia Chris. Cynthia, welcome to the show.
Thank you, David. Happy to be here.
I watch a lot of reruns of 90s sitcoms, and one thing that's so present in them that just isn't today is real animals and actors acting with them, and you're kind of scratching your head like, was this all done ethically? I mean, that's maybe a different question to ask, but it was such a presence in TV and film for the last 100 years, wasn't it?
Yeah, animals have been in part of cinema since cinema's history, since cinema's prehistory. If you think about something like the photographer Edward Muybridge's images of horses, dogs, any animal that you can think of in motion to try to figure out, what is their gait. There's a whole story about Muybridge and why he started that series. But animals in motion, live animals on screen has been there since the beginning.
I mean, the greatest actor that ever lived may have been that dog in the sitcom Frasier, I gotta say. When you look at the industry, and it's probably different dogs, it probably wasn't all one same dog, but when you look at the industry today, are these animal actors disappearing? Are they being depicted by CGI animals? Is the number of animals that we use, whether fake or real, is it just decreasing?
Well, compared to a decade that you're talking about, like, the early 1990s, or let's say the 1950s, whatever, there's so much more media being produced right now, and that I would hesitate to quantify, but there is a big displacement of live animal actors with computer-generated ones, with ones that are created by, super talented, amazing visual effects artists. And this has been true. It's been a growing trend since about the, mid-1990s. Jurassic Park is a real breakthrough in that regard, where we start to see animals, or whether they're very, very realistic or whether they're quite imaginary, appearing in a really realistic aesthetic in screens, and opting for those animals, those digital animals, instead of going to one of the Hollywood rental agencies and hiring a trained animal.
And for certain animals, like especially ones that aren't domesticated, like chimpanzees, or I think of velociraptors, it's very cruel to depict them on screen. I'm joking, of course, but when we think of certain animals, I think attitudes have changed. Like, it's not great to be kind of like using these animals in film. That's one thread of it. But for domesticated animals like cats and dogs who are, trained around us, know us, live with us, where I'm sure there are people that would consider that cruel. I'm not one of them. Why are these depictions dropping? Like, why aren't there dogs like Lassie or the dog from Frasier in TV as much?
Well, I think that there's a number of reasons for this. And one is that there has been a history of activism by groups like People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals against the use of animals in film and TV. So, you know, productions risk if accidents happen on the set, if anything bad happens, certainly risk garnering really, really unwelcome and negative, but deserved negative attention when that kind of stuff happens. And it does happen. Animals can be injured on set, and animals can even die on set. I remember reading an anecdote once from somebody who wrangled insects for film and TV, and she said, if there's a cockroach in my kitchen, I'm going to squash it. But if I take 1,000 cockroaches to a movie set, 1,000 cockroaches go home. And that's someone who's trying to practice, animal acting, animals appearing on screen in an ethical fashion, right? But I do think that we've become much more uncomfortable about seeing things like chimps, big cats, elephants in captivity and in this kind of situation.
That's where I completely agree. Like, I'm looking at Kramer playing with a chimp on Seinfeld in the 90s, and I'm thinking, what are you thinking? Like, this is, there's something off about this. But with a cat or a dog, maybe not. Those famous, credit things where it says no animals were harmed in the creation of this film or show, has it been historically accurate? Like, if I see that after an animal depiction, can I believe it from, an 80s movie or something?
Look, the record isn't perfect, and a number of years ago, the Hollywood Reporter did a big expose about some accidents that had happened on scenes that still got that stamp, right? And that should make us wary about what's going on in films where animals, especially so-called exotics, the big cats, the primates, and so on, appear. On the whole, yes, having observers on the scene who write reports about how the animals were treated is a very, very positive thing. And on the whole, I think that they've done real good for the industry, but it's an imperfect record.
CGI animals, they've gotten very good these days. And in some sense, for friendly interactions, great, you're not actually harming an animal. But they can also do things that no real animal could safely do, like fight, be tortured, killed. On the one hand, great, no animals are being tortured. But on the other hand, are these depictions what we should be showing people?
Well, that became a big concern of mine when I started thinking about this a few years ago for something that I wrote. And then, again, thinking about this issue recently because of a couple of films that I saw that re-sparked my interest in this question. Something like the Planet of the Apes series, right, where the violence gets really grotesque, hand-to-hand combat, right? I virtual crucifixion scene in one of these films, it is really grotesque. Or something like Gladiator, I think it's Gladiator 2, where, there's digital rhinoceroses and other animals that are subjected to incredible violence. And no, I think it's numbing. It's not something that I want to see or that I think is particularly ethical. You can, these are things that we wouldn't do to a live animal on screen. And I'm not sure that we should do them to digital animals either.
I think I'm with you on that. I think it's nuanced, but I do think it just gives filmmakers carte blanche to be brutal, and it's not something that all filmmakers should be taking. But in general, are you happy with this direction that animal cruelty has gone down and most animal depictions these days are digital?
Well, again, it's a little bit of a mixed bag. Like you suggested earlier, I'm not so uncomfortable with seeing a dog in a lot of places on screen or horses. Streaming media is full of costume dramas, right? Period pieces where horses are moving around in the background or, we're dashing off in our carriage. And I'm a lot less uncomfortable with that. That's work that those animals would probably be doing and have been doing for millennia, even if they weren't on screen doing it. But there are times when I think that there's a little something that's lost. And this has to do with the quality of the visual effects and what we tolerate, not whether it should be digital or not. I mean, a film that I was really found very distracting was the remake of Call of the Wild from a few years ago, 2020, with Harrison Ford. First of all, it's a adaptation of the Jack London novel. It is absolutely not true to the book, which is a distraction to begin with. But also, the digital dog which was, there was some scanning from a real dog, and a motion capture actor did some of the work. But a largely digital dog comes off kind of goofy. And if you've ever read Call of the Wild, you know that was really not London's intention. It's very distracting. You have a very grizzled Harrison Ford and a very goofy Lady and the Tramp kind of dog in the same scene, and it's a distraction.
Do you miss like these classic dogs, like the one from Frasier that I love so much? Do you miss these in sitcoms and stuff?
No. Generally, I would say not. I think if you're going to have a dog, it needs to be, and it's going to be digital. It's going to be done. It needs to be done very, very well. And this is something that I really liked about the new Superman. I liked the dog in Superman. I'm not sure everybody did, but I liked the dog in Superman. There was, again, a dog that was scanned from the director's real live dog, and then made to do all these crazy things, just like the actor.
Well, Cynthia Chris is a media and cultural studies professor at the College of Staten Island, CUNY in New York. Cynthia, thank you for joining me. I've enjoyed the chat.
Thank you, David. Pleasure to be here.
Coming up, we've got a quest to find other David Coopers. No, not me, other people. We have found a professor of Slavic literature with the same name as me who lives a different life. And we're going to have a fascinating conversation.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. Close your eyes, exhale, feel your body relax, and let go of whatever you're carrying today.
Well, I'm letting go of the worry that I wouldn't get my new contacts in time for this class. I got them delivered free from 1-800-CONTACTS. Oh my gosh, they're so fast.
And breathe.
Oh, sorry. I almost couldn't breathe when I saw the discount they gave me on my first order. Oh, sorry. Namaste.
Visit 1-800-CONTACTS.com today to save on your first order.
1-800-CONTACTS.
We're here because your heightened awareness deserves heightened entertainment. The last show with David Cooper.
Calling all modern David Coopers of the world right now, we are going to discuss the topic on everyone's mind in the media. Slavic languages and literatures. What the heck am I talking about? Well, a few weeks ago, my producer reached out to other prominent David Coopers. We have one here on the show. He is a Slavic languages and literatures professor at the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and I'm excited to have him here. David, what a joy it is to have you on the show.
I'm so happy you invited me. This promises to be fun.
Do I need to establish dominance right now, like with you? Like, do I have to try to come off as smarter than you? Spoiler, I probably won't.
No. I think, I'm already older than you, and then you're more famous than me, presumably. So, I think that balances things nicely.
According to the demographic of people named Clara Cooper, my mother, I think you're right. I am more famous than you. Let's talk about being named David Cooper, because I think there's other people out there who have generic names, like they Google themselves,
yes,
and who knows what they're going to get.
Yes.
When you Google yourself, what kind of chaos happens for you?
Yeah, so it's, recently, like I'd say maybe in the last decade or so, Google has gotten smart and sort of looks at who's searching because you're logged into Google, and so it shows me myself first. But I did go through a sort of crisis of identity, let's say, as the internet grew, and every time I'd search myself, I went further and further down the results page, right? And it's one of the reasons that I use my middle initial with professionally, right? Because I realized there's a lot of other academics out there named David Cooper. And so by going by David L. Cooper, I've reduced the field significantly. My major competition now is a Rabbi David L. Cooper, who is a prolific publisher.
He's mine too, Rabbi David Cooper. We've tried to have him on the show. He won't respond to our emails.
Oh, what's wrong with him? It would be a fun conversation. Yeah. So he's the one that sort of like comes in above me now, right? But back in the mid 90s when I was in graduate school, I was like one of the jobs I gave myself was to create the very first web pages for the departments that I was in, and of course I created a page for myself. And back then, which was before Google search, when you just searched in your Netscape browser or you used Yahoo search, I was top of the results page, right? Because there were very few people that had their own pages at that time.
I don't know where you get off saying I'm more famous than you. You are the number one Ask Jeeves in the 90s, David Cooper, that we could find. Your field of study, Slavic languages and literatures, at the commercial break you were telling me you do Czech and Russian literature. And I got to admit, as you said that, I'm thinking boring. And then you started getting into one of your research areas, like forged manuscripts in the Czech Republic. I guess it wasn't called the Czech Republic then.
Right. It was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, right?
And all I could think of was your research is super cool. Do you want to tell me about this specific thing that you've studied?
Yeah. So there was this was a point in time when you couldn't study Czech in school. It was Czech's Bohemia. The Bohemian Kingdom was part of Austro-Hungary. Education was in German, and Czech language was associated with religious reform, and it had sort of been suppressed. And so Czech patriots that were interested in sort of reviving the language and getting people using it more. A couple of them, one of the things they did was to create a series of manuscripts that looked like, medieval manuscripts of Czech poetry from a period long before there was other evidence of any use of the Czech language. And the idea was, hey, we have a language and a literary culture that's as old as German language culture, and we can compete with them. And we competed with them in the past, so why are we all speaking in German and writing in German now? We should be writing in Czech and speaking in Czech.
So these people in earnest wanted to create a rich history for their language, which had kind of been like glossed over.
Yes.
So in kind of like with good intent, they wanted to show they had a rich history, but no history was to be found. So they forged it.
Yes. And I think, in fact, that they believed that the history was there, but that it had been lost, because one of the effects of the religious wars around Czech religious reformation was devastation of manuscript holdings in Czech language, right? Because the language was associated with heresy. So the things got burned and they got, thrown away. And so I think they believed that they were recreating something that had, in fact, once existed.
And so these forgeries, were they passed off and people believed them for a very long time?
There were one or two experts that sort of expressed early skepticism, but for the most part, they conformed to what people thought they should find and expected to find. And so it really took, because one of the people involved in forging them, he was one of the leading experts in Old Czech language at the time. And so it took a long time before people got better than him, and enough better than him to say, these are not quite right. They don't, the language is not quite grammatically perfect in every way. So
interesting. So you used linguistics analysis to try to figure that out, stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, that was research that was done before I got involved with it. So I had to read up and sort of make sure that I understood that. But linguistics is fundamental to sort of the proof of the forgery. And they never found any direct evidence. That's one of the fascinating things, is that it's only indirect evidence that sort of points to who was likely involved in this. So
for someone who's never dipped their toe into Slavic literature, what is the gateway drug? Who is the gateway drug? Is it like Dostoevsky, Tolstoy? Is there a lesser known writer that's more accessible today?
Yeah, for a lot of our students, Dostoevsky is a big one, because he's one of the few that's actually frequently taught in high schools, right? And so Crime and Punishment is a big one. So I actually taught a Dostoevsky course last semester, and I asked at the beginning of the course, how many of you have read Crime and Punishment? And half the hands in the class went up, and that's often the lead in. So.
Now, my favorite interviews are ones that give you whiplash from smart to serious. From smart to stupid. Let's go to the stupid portion of the interview. Having an extremely common name. Yes. There's a certain anonymity of it, right? You could commit a crime and a newspaper could report it, and if someone searched you, probably that hit wouldn't show up as if you had a very specific name. How do you feel about the anonymity of having such a generic name?
It does work for you sometimes, right? It does sort of, allow you to sort of go under the radar at times. I don't conform to what a lot of people expect to find for a Slavic literature professor. I don't have a name that sounds like it comes from that part of the world, and my family doesn't come from that part of the world. My entry into Slavic studies was entirely different. I went as a Peace Corps volunteer after I graduated from college to Czechoslovakia as an English teacher and spent 2 years there, and that's what got me going with Slavic languages. So.
Now, as someone who teaches literature to students, do you get to experience that moment when a student is just like, aha, I get it. I now love this stuff, even though they might have just taken it as a BS elective?
Yes. Yeah. Or they take it to fulfill some general education requirement, and suddenly they're hooked and they're like, what are you teaching next semester? And that's wonderful. I love to see that happen. Yeah.
That must be a nice feeling.
Yeah, it really is. Yeah. And I can't take all the credit for it, because what they're doing is, they're reading compelling books, right? And I'm just sort of helping them I'm leading them to that material, right? So.
If we were to form a band called the David Coopers, what would be your instrument? I'm playing the pedal steel, which is like a country western instrument. Are you doing like Slavic folk ensemble situation? Like, what are you bringing to the table here?
Yeah, okay. I'll bring a really fun Slovak instrument that's called an ozembuch, which means literally the thing you strike on the ground. And it's kind of like one of these one-man band instruments that has like a cymbal and a string on it that you pluck, and you sort of beat it on the ground and you pluck the string, and it's,
You know, the journey into the David Coopers is a journey where I get to learn about myself through the eyes of others, and I appreciate you joining me on it, David. Any other deep thoughts that you want to share, reflections on having the same name as me?
You're only the second David Cooper that I've ever had an actual conversation with. There is another David Cooper actually in my town, in Champaign-Urbana. And I found that out because when I came to town, people said, "Oh, David Cooper, are you the guitar player?" And I'm like, "No, I don't play guitar." So we have a guitar player for our band, by the way.
Okay.
I met him in person because obviously as a musician, you also have like daytime gigs where you make your money. And when I left my car for service at a local service station, I signed up for a ride to my job to work. And the person driving me was David Cooper.
So I guess what I'm hearing from this story is that I'm your second favorite David Cooper that you've met.
Well, depending on how this conversation goes, you're moving up.
All right. Well, it's about to end. David, it's been a joy having you on the show. Any other recommendations for people to get into Slavic literature? Like if I were to pick up a book right now, what would it be?
Oh, my. One of the perennial students' favorites is Master and Margarita by Mikhail Bulgakov. It's a wonderful sort of magical tale that's set kind of in between Moscow and Jerusalem, and it's a fantastic one where the devil comes to Moscow and creates all kinds of chaos. Great fun.
Sounds exciting. Well, David Cooper, not myself, I'm not just vain, is a Slavic languages and literatures professor at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign. David, it has been a joy having you on the program. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, thanks. It's been fun.
Scientists have done it. They've computed the exact time before bed that you should stop eating. So midnight snackers, brace yourselves, because you'll learn why bedtime pizza is bad for your health.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Spring is here, and there's a whole new way to chai at Starbucks that's made perfect for you. Choose your sweetness, dial it up, or keep things light. Add a touch of pistachio, a hint of strawberry, or vanilla, or make it a spring classic with lavender. Because this season, there's endless ways to chai at Starbucks.
We work hard to strike the right amount of intelligence and ignorance. The last show with David Cooper.
Midnight snackers, brace yourselves. There's new research that suggests your late-night romantic relationship with your fridge might be messing with your heart. Turns out when you eat could matter almost as much as what you eat. Wait, are you telling me that bedtime pizza is medically suspicious? I am here with someone to discuss just this. Her name is Jess Cording. She's a dietitian, health coach, and author. Jess, welcome to the program.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
I feel like eating before bed is something I don't do, only because I brush my teeth. And after I do that midnight teeth brush, it's my natural food cutoff. But a lot of people do it. Is there anything wrong with it? Like, would health advice tell you to not snack before bed?
That is such a great question, and it's one that I get a lot in my work as an RD. And what I can say is the research does suggest that it's a good idea to limit that late night eating.
And what sort of thing? Is it all created equally? Like if I eat a bag of chocolate versus, I don't know, a handful of kale, is bed eating or midnight eating bad no matter what you eat, or is different things hit you differently?
I love that question. And to be honest, I do believe that it does depend what you eat. There is still something there. But what the research suggests is that when we don't give ourselves enough time to digest before we lie down for the day, that's been shown to negatively impact cardiometabolic health. So things related to our heart health, sleep quality, blood sugar regulation, that when we're eating too close to bedtime, no matter what it is, just that alone does seem to negatively impact health. But to your point, I think there's a huge difference between like an entire pizza versus like, a little bit of salad or a bowl of cereal or something like that.
When I was first thinking about this topic, I thought like maybe weight gain and things like that. I'm surprised to hear heart health can be affected by before bed eating. Say more about what's going on there, maybe the mechanism, or what do we think about that?
Sure. Well, you're not wrong about weight gain, first off. That can also impact heart health. But, we're looking at things like blood pressure, blood sugar, which is more specific to, when we're talking about the diabetes risk, for example, but it's all connected. And then the brain health piece of the picture, like if our blood vessels to our heart are not in great shape due to lifestyle habits, that's going to negatively impact our brain function. So it's all connected. So that's why if you hear like cardiometabolic, it's not just about the heart, it's about our whole body system.
Got it. Now, what is the magic cutoff? Like, what is the number of hours before bed that I should really limit my eating? If I'm going to have a big old dinner, how close to bedtime should that be?
I'm glad you phrased it that way, because so often I'm asked, what time should you stop eating? And that is so variable, because what if somebody works the night shift, right? And they're like, their bedtime is a totally different time of day. Or what if someone's, going to bed really early, or they don't get home until late? What I tend to recommend based on the literature is aiming for 2 to 3 hours of, when you finish dinner to when you go to sleep.
Good. I'm happy with what I do. I'm not doing anything wrong because I do that. What is nocturnal dipping in blood pressure, and how does this relate to this whole topic?
Yeah, so what can happen is if your blood sugar drops overnight, that could be very disruptive to sleep. That's when you may find that you're waking up in the middle of the night, like really like disoriented or hungry and needing to snack again. But sometimes that's precipitated by a steep increase in blood sugar, and then it drops pretty quickly. So you're going to see that more often if you are eating, say, like really high sugar, high carbohydrate foods, maybe without enough protein, fat, and or fiber to slow down that digestive process. So that is something to be aware of. That's why having a balanced meal before bed is definitely recommended, as opposed to like a giant bowl of pasta.
Well, let's talk about that giant bowl of pasta. So I have one at 10:45. I crawl into bed at 11. Are there parts of my body that are kind of like staying awake to digest this food while the rest of me wants to rest?
So what you may find is, maybe you've heard the term carb coma. So what initially happens is that there is an initial increase, or your body, in order to digest that carbohydrate, in a healthy working pancreas, it will release insulin to help process that starch that's beginning to enter the bloodstream as carbohydrate. Because what happens when we eat any kind of starch, pasta is an example, as we digest that food, the starch molecules break down to smaller and smaller pieces and then enter our bloodstream as, like glucose, fructose, for example. And then they go to all the cells that need it to do their jobs. And we need some, that's important. But what happens initially, as our body is trying to help with that process of getting the carbs to where they need to go in the body, it releases insulin, which also has the effect of increasing our body's absorption of amino acids. And one that a lot of people have heard about is tryptophan, which is found in Thanksgiving turkey, gets the most airtime, but you're going to find it in other animal proteins. You're going to find it in like oats, chickpeas, a few other foods. And that actually has been shown to help promote sleep. So what you may find is if you eat a lot of carbs all at once, you may get really sleepy really quickly. And also your body's working really hard to process all that carbohydrate. But then what can happen is if there wasn't enough protein in that meal, not enough fat, not enough fiber, you may find you wake up feeling ravenous, irritable, kind of just off a little bit later.
Interesting. What about when I wake up at night, I've had too salty a meal, and then I like just chug a liter of water? Is that
that's a thing?
Yeah, I call
so
it.
That's from sodium.
Yeah, the salt, the salt thirst, basically.
Yes, yeah, a salty meal, that's definitely going to have that effect.
Now, does eating close to bedtime touch on our circadian rhythms? Like, does it change our ability to like have a normal structured sleep schedule based on light?
It can. Like a few things to think about in this case. So one, you mentioned light. That could look like if you're eating in front of the television close to night. That's going to disrupt your body's levels of melatonin, and the brain's going to get kind of confused. Like, I don't get it. Is this daytime? Is this nighttime? Like, why are we around nighttime? I don't know what's happening. And then that can disrupt sleep. Whether you have a hard time falling asleep or you fall asleep but then end up waking up, again, your body's confused about what time it is. So that's one piece of the picture. But then also, too, Our body is meant to rest. And if it's working really, really hard to digest a big meal, that's also going to disrupt circadian rhythm because the body's going to get confused about what it's supposed to be doing at that time.
Suppose someone's listening and they're listening to your advice. They buy in, but there's this sort of thing with health where it's like, I'll do it tomorrow. And they feel that they wake up genuinely hungry late at night. And what's the big deal? I'll just snack at 2 a.m. when I wake up for a second. How bad is that for you? Like, what would you tell someone who's sort of listening but going to continue to do it anyway?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. I think it depends on a few things. One is, what are they snacking on when they wake up at 2 a.m? That's definitely going to impact. There's a big difference between having like a hard-boiled egg to settle your stomach, give yourself some like tryptophan, some protein, some fat to help you settle down, versus like a bag of chips at 2 a.m, which isn't really going to offer much in the way of nutrition. But it's also a clue. Like if you're regularly waking up hungry at 2 a.m, that's a nudge to look at what you're having for dinner. Like, are you eating enough at dinner? Are you eating foods that are serving your body well and helping you get restful sleep? Because, these habits, they impact us in the long term, right? But also in the shorter term. Like, yes, what we're doing in order to support, healthy sleep, healthy heart, that's going to impact, for example, like dementia risk later on, long-term heart health, but it's also impacting how we feel now. So I would also ask that person, well, like, how's that working out for you? Like, how do you feel during the day too?
Is there, I know this article I read kind of summarizing this research didn't mention it, but alcohol before bed, is there any good advice there? I know the general advice is try to limit it, but is a 2 to 3 hour rule apply there as well?
That's a wonderful question. I do think that's somewhat variable. Big picture, alcohol is so disruptive to sleep. And as we get older, we tend to be less and less efficient at processing alcohol. I know in my own life, after 35, my body was just like, what are you doing? No, this does not work for us. Like I could not sleep if I had even half of a glass of wine. Like, just not a thing for me anymore. But what happens with alcohol is we may get that initial sedative effect, and then we may drop into a deep sleep, kind of like just drop her. And then we wake up a few hours later, like having missed out on that great quality REM sleep.
I'm here with dietitian, health coach, and author Jess Cording. She has a book available wherever books are sold called The Little Book of Game Changers, 50 Healthy Habits for Managing Stress and Anxiety. And when we come back after the break, we're going to go through some of those habits. I'm excited to do it as a stressed and anxious person all the time. Maybe you are too. We'll be back with Jess Cording in a moment.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
This episode is brought to you by Peloton. Break through the busiest time of year with the brand new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus, powered by Peloton IQ. With real-time guidance and endless ways to move, you can personalize your workouts and train with confidence, helping you reach your goals in less time. Let yourself run, lift, sculpt, push, and go. Explore the new Peloton Cross Training Tread Plus at onepeloton.com.
Smart, sharp, and slightly unhinged. Late night's fresh perspective. The Last Show with David Cooper.
There's a great scene in one of the Hulk movies where somebody asks the Hulk, how do you not get angry? And he says, there's a secret. I'm always angry. I feel that way about anxiety and stressed. I may not seem that way, but I'm anxious and stressed all the time. Maybe you are too. I am here with dietitian, health coach, and author Jess Cording. She's got a book called The Little Book of Game Changers, 50 Healthy Habits for Managing Stress and Anxiety. And that is just what we're about to talk about. That's available wherever books are sold. Jess, welcome back to the program.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
It's an ambitious title, 50 Habits for Stress and Anxiety. I'm secretly having you on the show to help me with my stress and anxiety for free, so thank you for that. Let's go through some of them. First of all, what motivated you to write this book?
Honestly, I needed it. I could not find a book out there that really spoke to me in terms of like something easy to digest, that I could pick it up, get something out of it, and I really wanted to create that.
I don't even know where to begin. Are there classes of tips in the book?
So yeah, the book is broken down into mind, body, and spirit. I've taken a lot of heat for some of the spirit ones from people who just wanted like just the body or just the mindset. But I think all are really important when we're talking about how we manage our stress and anxiety.
I think so too. At the risk of going on a tangent, one of my favorite books about like art making and the creative process is by a guy named Steven Pressfield. And I'm like pretty rational. I don't really believe in the spiritual stuff. And about a third of the book is spiritual. And I suspended my disbelief and I read it. And while I don't believe in these big concepts, there's a lot to learn from them. So I'm on board. But let's start with the mind. What are some of the tips that I could look forward to if I read your book?
Yeah, so a lot of it has to do with just, looking at, what is stressing you out and acknowledging what you can and can't control. I think that's a huge piece of the picture. And one I've had to definitely deal with. I have OCD. I didn't find that out till my 30s. But if I had known that about myself when I was much younger, I think it would have been easier to just look at like, okay, these are the things happening. What can I actually do something about? But also just too, I think you have to really take stock and look at what's going on. And, how is that affecting you? How's it showing up? And let go what you can't control.
Interesting. So self-reflection, I suppose, is the grand overarching thing there. Are there any like quick and easy tips, like clickbaity kind of stuff?
Totally. My favorite maybe is to put your own name on your calendar, because it is so easy to just give our time away to other people. And I know for a lot of people I've supported, I've dealt with this too, that can be one of the biggest stressors because we're too busy doing things that maybe we don't want to do or that we feel like we have to do. And it's just so easy to put our own needs way at the bottom of the list. So something I started experimenting with clients and patients, well over 10 years ago now, was put your own name on your calendar, whether that's for your workouts, like your appointments, just time for a break, because that makes it, not only does it prevent other people from booking that time, it's a subtle reminder that you matter just as much as everything else on that list.
Are you saying like blocked section? I'm thinking of like Google Calendar.
Yeah.
So side note, I don't actually control my own calendar. It's a whole thing, but we won't, my producer does. Not important, but like you're saying block off times for me on it?
Exactly. Yeah, like literally like put your name, put David on your calendar or have your assistant put it on there. So that way that is your time. Even if it's like 10 minutes, it still matters.
Okay, I'm going to do that starting today. Calendars stress me out. They're like this, I don't know. I feel like I'm falling off. You know those dreams you have when you're falling off the cliff and you're like hitting the ground? Like, do you ever have one of these falling dreams?
Mine are where I'm in a car that's falling off of a cliff backwards.
Even better.
So I feel you.
As time approaches the start date to events, that's kind of how I feel. Taking this in a bit of another direction, are there any other tips to having a healthy mind?
This is going to sound really basic, but what we eat can play a really big part. The book has a whole section on specific foods and nutrients, but if nothing else, just having balanced meals, you will be shocked at what a difference that can make. Because when we're having a balance of protein, fat, and carbohydrates at our meals, that's supporting stable blood sugar, and that is a key aspect of our mental well-being, because when our blood sugar is regulated, everything else works better too.
Should I not be eating pasta 8 days a week? It is my favorite food. Is there ever too much with pasta?
Listen, I'm Italian. I'm never going to tell someone not to eat pasta, but from it as a dietitian, I will tell you, you're going to get the most bang from your buck with that pasta if you're pairing it with some protein. So maybe add some chicken, some shrimp, or check out one of the chickpea or, other legume-based pastas for more protein.
I do make a chickpea and tomato pasta that
there
I
you
love.
Go.
Okay, moving on to the body. I tend to feel a lot of stress in my body. I'm a nail biter. I'm always like physically tense. It's probably made my shoulders really tense. Are there tips to be less stressed or anxious in the body?
Yeah, so movement. There's so much research there. Whether it's, a walk or a more vigorous activity. In the book, I interviewed a few people who are personal trainers about specific types of movement that can be especially helpful. So, there's that saying, and I don't know where I first saw this, but it's like, if you are stressed, take a walk. If you're anxious, take a walk. If you're sad, take a walk. Like, I think there is something to that. And the research does support it.
Sometimes I really don't want to walk because my mind's so busy and I can't imagine wasting the time. And at those times, if I take a long brisk walk where I'm like race walking, it actually does kind of calm the mind. So that one's, I guess, a tip for both. I am curious about spiritual tips to help with stress and anxiety. I don't even know what that would mean. Like, where do I begin with that one?
Yeah, so I'll give you two really quick. So one that's a little less woo-woo is to just clean out your space. My husband is not a neat freak. I am. It is literally the only thing we fight about. is the mess. But like there is research that shows that when we are around a lot of clutter, that can do stuff to our stress levels. So whether it's cleaning out a drawer, cleaning your whole home, I share a specific story in the book about that experience of decluttering an apartment and rearranging furniture and the effect that it had on my life personally at a certain time. There is research around that approach. But also the thing I think I've taken the most heat for on this in the spiritual side is, listen, I grew up with Catholicism as a frame of reference, but as a confirmation gift when I was 14, my mother gave me my first deck of tarot cards. I've been reading cards for like over 25 years. And I mentioned there's a chapter in there about if you find it helpful, like tarot, oracle cards, like these like seeming random things can give you some food for thought. And it doesn't have to mean anything beyond like your reaction to that card. But the Amazon reviews are hilarious. Just how many people had issue with the mention of tarot cards in a book by a dietitian. I kind of actually love that.
Well, I get it. I mean, even if you don't believe it works or the mechanism, it does start a conversation. If you pull a card that is, controversial to your life, you start reflecting on your life. You start thinking about things to relate to what the card means. And all of a sudden you're having a deep conversation, whether you believe in the spiritual side of that or not.
Exactly.
I myself not. But rewinding back to cleaning your space, like, to me, if that's what spiritualism is, then I'm fully bought in, because like, I completely agree. Clutter, I can't function in clutter. And I don't know how people do. And people who say they do when they finally clean up their space, I think still feel better.
There's something to that. And yeah, I think with spirit, especially here in the States, like it often gets lumped in with religious stuff, and spirituality is a more religious thing. But I think it's also about like that inner fire, like that inner spirit, not just something external. And I think that's what I was really trying to look at in the book. Like, what could we do to just nurture that inner fire and help it stay strong?
All right, if there's one quick thing I could do to be less stressed and less anxious today that anyone listening could like do in 5 minutes, is there a secret here? Is there like one juicy one?
See, I mean, based on what we've been talking about, I think just take a walk and put some chicken on your pasta for dinner tonight.
Sorry. Yes, for me, but anyone generally speaking.
Yeah, I mean, listen, take a deep breath, drink some water. If you've got some anxious thoughts circling around, write them down or talk to somebody about it. There is research behind all of that.
Well, the book is called The Little Book of Game Changers, 50 Healthy Habits for Managing Stress and Anxiety, and it is by dietitian, health coach, and author Jess Cording, who is here. Jess, I have enjoyed the chat. Thank you so much for your time and for being on the show.
Thank you for having me today.
Did you know we have video clips of the interviews we air on The Last Show? Watch the brilliant academics who show up, take our stupid questions, pause, sigh, and answer them anyway. To see these clips, follow us on social media. We're on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and more. Our handle on these platforms is lastshow.pizza. Coming up after the break. Whether you know it or not, AI is starting to manage your money, predicting what you'll spend, when you'll save, even whether you deserve credit. Are the robots a helpful financial assistant or an algorithmic accountant watching your every move? We'll pick that apart for you in a moment.
Want to be part of The Last Show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644.
Sierra has all the best active and outdoor brands you need. From athletic stuff, like a full court pickup game, swish, to athletic-ish stuff, like a half-mile stroll. Get those steps in. And for morning hikes up the mountain trail, good pace. To nighttime ghost stories from the camping chair. What a twist. Whatever level of active, Sierra loves it all. Head to Sierra or Sierra.com for the brands you want at the prices that let you do it all. From athletic to athletic-ish, Sierra's got it.
Exploring both interstellar and interpersonal space-time continuums. The Last Show with David Cooper.
Money used to be simple. You earned it, you spent it, you maybe argued with your bank about it. Heck, it was a piece of paper you carried in your pocket. But now AI wants to analyze it, predict it, manage it for you. Are we still in control of our finances in a world where banks and financial companies use AI, or are we just outsourcing everything to do with money to the robots? Well, that is what we're going to discuss here with Osama Mansour, an associate professor of information systems at Lund University. Osama, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you, David. I'm happy to be here.
So, I mean, the idea that I'm no longer in control of my money and some large language model makes financial decisions for me is kind of scary. I think a lot of people don't know what's going on with their cash. How does AI enter the conversation with people's relationships with money these days?
Yeah, I think that the relationship is changing in a significant way because the financial industry in general is transforming from the traditional bank, which has a monopoly over our financial transactions in the sense that we use their services. They are the main mediator for our financial transactions. All of us have now a mobile bank on our phone, which we use to pay bills, transfer money, etc. But I think this is all technology nowadays. So in Europe, in the EU, and there are also regulations in other parts of the world. I've been looking into Canada. They don't have a framework on similar, but there are what we call open banking or open finance regulations. The idea is so simple. So David, you have a bank account. You buy coffee, you go to a restaurant, you have lots of financial transactions, maybe you pay for your mortgage, right? The idea in these regulations that you own the data, you own these transactions, and the regulations within the EU now I'm talking about, because it's a regulatory approach, not a market approach, where banks are forced to open up their systems to external third parties, which we call fintechs. Fintechs are financial tech companies that are tech savvy. They have expertise in developing digital financial services. And the whole idea here is that these fintechs have a legal right to access your data and my data with our consent. So in Sweden, we use we sign in with something called Bank ID, which is a digital identifier. And then you get the data and you do with it whatever you want. And when we think about it with the advancements of AI, there is what we call the AI data assemblage. So you're a fintech, you have advanced AI technology. You could do anything with it, and you could do something like an AI agent that could pay your bill if you forget it on your behalf.
Which is cool, but companies getting the complete register of every transaction I do and when, that's a huge value to companies to figure out how to advertise, how to market, how to suggest a loan to me. And what's stopping companies from just analyzing that data and knowing things about me and trying to get me to spend or offer me loans that I can barely afford or things like this?
You're absolutely correct. The potential is huge, but the risks are also equally huge. One of the problems, first of all, the idea of open banking, this idea of data access, right? It promises empowering customers in the sense that you and me can give consent to banks.
That's how every big tech company starts. They tell a story about, quote unquote, empowering customers, delighting their customers. But then years later, the products aren't great and our privacy's gone.
Exactly. So and I agree with you. And what happens is that when we get access to the data and try to develop services, there are now loopholes in the regulations. I think you can imagine with me that regulators in Brussels who set these legal frameworks, they don't understand the technical infrastructure behind data access. So I give you one example. In Sweden, we use a small app called Kivra. So I get my, let's say, mobile invoice. And because of these data access technologies now, I don't need to go to my mobile bank to make the payment of the invoice. I pay it inside the app, which is actually designed originally to just to digitalize our communication. So I get my tax declaration on it, not on paper, right?
But now a third-party company has all your financial data.
Exactly. So when I pay my invoice, what happens technically in the background is that I'm giving access to this app to go into my account, take out the money, and pay the invoice. The question, which echoes what you say, is that if I give consent to that app, for how long does it get access to my account? These are question marks. What I know is that they can get access for the next 6 months. So you give them consent one time, but they could access it for an extended period of time. And we don't know what they do with it.
And these companies, you're now like a product. Your financial information is now a product that they could potentially sell. Maybe in the EU, there's better regulation. I doubt there's good regulation for this here where I live in the US, maybe marginally better in Canada. What do companies do with this aggregate financial data, like this consumer financial data?
Well, now there is a large sector within the fintech industry that works with data. What it does, basically, they get the licenses to get access to our data. And as you know, financial transactions can be quite messy, unstructured. What they do with it, they process it, they organize it, and then they sell it to banks, to other banks, or even to fintechs who can use the data.
What about like AI-driven credit reporting? Like here in North America, there's these credit bureaus, but they kind of operate on an antiquated system. They don't have that much data. It's like whether you paid your loans, how many credit lookups there was, the age of your accounts. It's pretty low tech. But there's a new class of companies that's trying to like do AI to predict whether you'll repay your loan, even if your traditional credit score is low.
Yeah, with these data access regulations, these traditional credit reporting system, as you say, are old technology. Even paying with a card is now considered old technology. What happens is that with AI agents, once you have access to massive sets of data, right, there is an opportunity to do more. I mean, they call it fair credit scoring because you get alternative financial data, which means that it doesn't depend only on your transaction history in the traditional incumbent bank, but they could look into your mobile invoice payment, which you did in the Kivra app, right? Which is not a bank. It's just a service to receive digital letters.
There's one small positive upside here that it could include more people into loans and give them access to credit where their traditional credit score is low, but they use AI to predict you with a higher credit score, fine, whatever. But taking a step back, like 30, 40 years ago, like banks were closed. You had privacy with your data. Is this just the new world we're living in? Like if you use a credit card, if you use a phone to pay, basically you have no privacy.
No, but you are correct. Until 2019, the banking industry, the financial industry was as we know it. They protect the data. They are highly regulated organizations, so they develop a lot of security protocols because one mistake, there are massive fines to pay. But this is changing. I think what we can say that the data AI assemblage in today's world has potential, but it creates risk. And we are data points, just like on social media. So what I mean is that there are concerns about data vulnerability. There are concerns about misusing the data. And you can imagine that open access to financial data means massive risks for fraud.
That's exactly right. I guess the moral of the story is take out all your cash, close your bank accounts, and keep it in your mattress at home. Osama Mansour is an information systems professor at Lund University in Sweden. Osama, I've enjoyed the chat. Thanks for being on the show.
Thank you so much, David.
Up next, should you trust your mood of the day, even if it's particularly negative, and then act on it? No. You should be even keel, cool as a cucumber, and we'll tell you how to manage those moods and not act on impulses in a minute.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. The last show with David Cooper, where we utilize non-linear reverse, inverse, backward thinking protocols. It sounds like this.
I think a lot of people treat their feelings as facts, and that's going to be our topic today here on Therapy Thursdays. On a Wednesday, we are joined an expert in family and marital therapy, social worker Gary Direnfeld. But feelings as facts, that's what I want to talk about. If you feel a certain way, some people feel immediately entitled to act based on that feeling, and that isn't always the right call. And we'll talk about that and more with Gary. Gary, welcome to the show.
Great to be with you again, David. I got to tell you, feelings, they look to be anchored. If I have a feeling, there must be a reason for it. And like I said, they look to be anchored. I really learned this. Oh my goodness. It was the 1990s. I was sick as a dog. And I got to tell you, I'm lucky. I have a stable mood. It is, between here and here, never manic, never really depressed, just coasting along nicely. But I was sick. It was early 90s. And I had this sinus infection. I got a medication for it, erythromycin. It's a popular antibiotic. Within a day and a half, first of all, my stomach was just falling to pieces. I was in such pain, but I was depressed. And I was literally on a couch, my head in Arlene's lap, crying. I was that depressed. And it was at a point in time I was trying to get my private practice going, and it wasn't doing well, David. It really wasn't. And I thought, this is the source of my sadness and depression. Because of the stomach ache, I attributed it to the erythromycin. I went back to the doctor. I said, I can't take this anymore. She switched my medication. Within a day, the stomach ache went away. So too the depression.
Interesting. So you got that whiplash of an extreme mood from the context of someone who wasn't getting extreme moods.
Yes. But again, this idea of feelings need to be anchored in reality. So I attached that extreme mood to my circumstance, not getting the private practice off the ground yet. But it was that next day that I realized I'm not depressed. I don't feel bad about where my private practice is. What the hell was I thinking? And the takeaway, the learning is that we people, I'm including myself, we do this all the time. We have a big feeling. Sometimes it's a small feeling. We don't necessarily know where it comes from, but we say it's because of. We attach that feeling. And then we act as if we act accordingly. It gets us into trouble.
I am not blessed like you being a cool cucumber. I have had, right now I'm at a journey with my mental health that things are a lot more even keel. My extreme moods at the high end, happy and low are not unmanageable, but there's been a period in my life where they were extremely unmanageable. I don't believe you can necessarily control your mood. I think there's things you can do to take care of yourself so that tomorrow you have a better chance of having a better mood. But in that moment, I don't think you can control it. I don't think you can control your initial impulses. Like maybe you're sitting there on the couch with your head in your wife's lap, crying, thinking, I'll just close the practice. That'll end my problems. I don't think you can control those impulses, but I think you can control your reaction to those impulses. Suppose you've got a wife who's jealous of the husband a lot and, his female coworker texts him something about work and you see it on the phone. A reasonable thing. There's nothing phony going on, nothing fishy going on, I guess. That wife may not be able to control the impulse of suspecting that, he must be having an affair because his coworker texted him about an Excel spreadsheet.
Yes.
But she has a choice with how she acts and how she treats that impulse.
And therein is, the heart of cognitive behavior therapy. We can have a feeling, we can have a big feeling, and we have to catch ourselves in the midst of that feeling. And then we have to ask ourselves consciously, intentionally, does this feeling necessarily make sense? Do the facts on the ground support what I'm feeling? Or are my feelings, in a sense, running amok? And, many people where their feelings get them into trouble is that feeling runs amok and they run along with it. And as you started the top of the show, they take their feeling as a fact. We step back. We want to put thinking between feeling and doing. That's the heart of cognitive behavior therapy. Yesterday on my social media, Facebook, I wrote about borderline personality disorder. These are persons who frequently, if someone gets too close emotionally, they feel intimidated. If someone pulls away who should be emotionally close, they feel abandoned. There is this constant discomfort in their skin with their feelings. There's a therapy, it's called dialectical behavior therapy. And there's a number of components to dialectical behavior therapy, otherwise known as DBT, which isn't CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy. I'm talking dialectical behavior therapy. But in this therapy, the person learns, believe it or not, meditation and mindfulness. Meditation is the art of practicing being aware of where our feelings are. That's it. That's what meditation is. I sit down for 5, 10, 15, 20 minutes, and I just kind of monitor myself, and at the same time, kind of lower the shoulders, relax my breathing, get calm, get comfortable. And I do that once or twice a day. That's meditation. Mindfulness is when we put that meditation into practice in real life. So I have this big feeling. I have to be aware of it. That's the practice of meditation. The mindfulness is catching it in real life and then calming myself. These are strategies that are taught in dialectical behavior therapy, amongst other strategies as well.
No, it's a very technical and psychology kind of method of what I'm talking about, which is not as technical, but this idea of, okay, I'm feeling very low today. Like I think last week or the week before, I was talking to some psychologist who did a research paper about how loneliness can be a feeling one has when they actually have community.
Yes.
Being socially isolated and that feeling of loneliness, they can be separate. And I'm someone who can be in a room with my friends and feel like I don't fit in and that I'm lonely. I can also be someone home alone with nothing to do and feel fine. And so just taking that moment to myself and saying, this is the mood of the moment, the mood of the day, and it will pass. I have felt this way before and then woken up the next day and not felt this way. It feels very extreme. I feel very lonely, very much uncomfortable in my own skin, very much like regretting that I left my house, and it'll pass. And it's also true for really kind of manic moods where I want to do a million things. The other day I did a live radio show last Friday. I filled in for a colleague. And then I had my show that night. And my girlfriend's like, you're working way too much. And I'm like, no, I got to do work. In between these two shows, I started doing extra work. I was like, and then I took a deep breath. I'm like, I feel really manic right now because I had a really exciting day. I'm going to crash around 9. Don't overwork. Don't overcommit. Just do what you need to do. Take a deep breath. And then when the crash came at 9 p.m., I went to bed, and it's only through that experience of being in the place, taking that deep breath, knowing that the next day the mood changed, that I was able to have that check. You call it cognitive behavioral therapy. I call it taking a deep breath, but it's the same thing. We are talking about feelings as facts. Don't treat them that way. I'm here with Gary Direnfeld, a very handsome, very talented social worker and therapist friend of mine. It is Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday. And we come back, we'll continue this discussion about not necessarily trusting all your extreme moods to the point where you behave based on them.
Want to be part of the last show with David Cooper? Call us and join the conversation. 1-888-505-6644. When the day is done, we're just getting started. The last show with David Cooper.
And we are back. It is Wednesday night, which means it's broadcasting's only mental health specific content intended for a Thursday that airs on a Wednesday. I can't even get it right. It's Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday. Gary Direnfeld is here. We are talking about feelings as facts. Should you treat every extreme mood that you have as something to behave directly on? The answer, no, but it's a little more complicated than that. Gary, welcome back.
I want to tell you a story. this person asks the rabbi, what's the difference between Christianity and Judaism?
I've heard this one. Is this where the priest, the rabbi, and the imam all walk into a bar, or is this different?
This one's different.
All right.
This one's different. So the rabbi says, and by the way, I'm not presenting myself as a theologian here, so I could get this wrong. But here's the story. I feel like I needed that disclaimer. Anyways, so the rabbi says, in Christianity, you are judged by your feelings. You are judged by your thoughts, improper feelings. Yet, in Judaism, we are not. We're judged by our behavior. And the rabbi explained, just as you did, actually, David, in the first segment, that feelings can be so fast, thoughts so fast, so fleeting, that in truth, we can't control them. They come, they go. However, behavior is always a choice. And that's why the rabbi said that in Judaism, we're not going to hold you accountable for what you're feeling or thinking, but we, or the Lord, will hold you accountable for what you do. And, again, it's built into dialectical behavior therapy. It's built into cognitive behavior therapy. We're always trying to manage our behavior. Mm-hmm. Your example, again, before the break, of being in a somewhat manic state, not clinically manic, but you were excited, you were trying to do a lot, and you were realizing that you could overdo it and a crash would come. That is mindfulness in action, that you had the wherewithal to look at your behavior in the moment, live as it was occurring. You were able to make a reasonable prediction based on your observable behavior, so that when that prediction came true, you were no longer overwhelmed by it. You had a strategy in place. You went to bed.
Yeah. And I crashed and I felt terrible. And I replayed the whole day in my mind. I'm like, oh, everything went bad. I fixated on mistakes, but I took a deep breath in the low mood and thought, this will pass too.
So there's a Jewish expression, tsuris mitsuris. That means problems on top of... I don't know where all this Jewish is coming from today.
I'm Gary. I got tsuris mitsuris with the rabbi. Oi, Gewalt.
Tsuris mitsuris means problems on top of problems. So some people kind of thought build. Oh my goodness, today's going to be a bad day. Oh, it's going to be a bad day because this is going to go wrong. And that's tsuris mitsuris. I'm adding problems on top of my problems. And heck, some problems are real. That tsuris is real. But then we layer on more tsuris. That's tsuris mitsuris. Problems on top of problems. The challenge is, even if something goes wrong, you have a bad day, you have a big feeling that is uncomfortable, don't thought build. Don't add tsuris mitsuris. Don't act out on that behavior. Take that pause that refreshes. Lower your shoulder. As we're talking, we're on video talking with each other, I can see where my shoulders are. And for me, I'm forever aware of the position of my shoulders. And when they go up, I know I'm getting excited about something, which could be good or it may not be good. I lower my shoulders. And so we want to stave off the tsuris mitsuris. Life being life, we're all going to have problems. We will. I'm not wishing that on you. That's a fact. However, it always comes back to how we manage them and realizing that sometimes our feelings, we get it wrong. Mm-hmm. We get it, something, you may say something to me that triggers me and I think, oh, you dastardly David Cooper, how dare you say that to me? And then wait a minute. I misheard David Cooper. That was actually a compliment.
Moving along a little bit here, what do we do when a friend has very mood-based behavior? Like, so when we catch them when they're feeling great, everything's a yes, they're the best person to be around, and we catch them in a low mood, they're mean, and they're very kind of like unbalanced with their emotions, but then the behavior matches those emotions. Like, what if it's a friend? What if it's a parent? What if it's a sibling? What if it's a spouse?
We have kids growing up in households where the mood of the day reigns and determines behavior. Mm-hmm. And that's where you get the phrase walking on eggshells, because somebody is in a bad mood. Look out, I'm walking on eggshells. Don't poke the bear. So depending on who that is with, your ability to reflect on the situation and recognize it for what it is, your capacity to bring that to another person's attention, the capacity of that person to reflect on that kind of feedback. All of this is going to determine what we do with that. With some people, if they approach us in a bad mood, it's like, you know what? I just want to get out of Dodge. I'm going to extricate myself. With other persons, I may comment and say, I've noticed something. I'm curious. You seem to be in a foul mood. Did somebody, piss in your cornflakes this morning? What's going on? And did you know that you're exuding it? Right? So we can use empathy and curiosity to bring to someone else's attention their mood and the impact. But again, depends on the relationship, depends on that person. And it also depends on yourself to present that, not from a place of blaming, guilting, or shaming, but a place of wonder and curiosity and concern.
I know I said this before the break, but I feel like I end up saying this to friends, sometimes my girlfriend Miranda, my parents. I've said this to them a million times. I don't know how true this is, but I deeply believe it. I believe you can control your mood. Sorry, let me restate that. I don't believe you can control your mood. Yeah. I don't believe you can control your impulses, but I do believe you can control how you act and what you do with those moods and those impulses. And I know that's the basis for cognitive behavioral therapy. We just talked about all that, but I believe that, and there are those that don't believe that, and I don't know how you can come to that conclusion, but I find myself saying that a lot, and I just feel like that's an important point to make in this conversation.
Totally. And David, that's what makes us human beings, that we have this capacity, that we don't need to act just on the basis of a feeling, that we can self-reflect. The other animals don't do that. This is what makes us uniquely human. And for some, it is a stretch, though. For some, it is difficult. And there are strategies to learn that as a basic skill.
What are some of them quickly? Just mindfulness, breathing, telling yourself it'll pass, knowing that you felt this way before and then the next day you didn't, like just kind of taking stock of when things are normal.
Yes, those are the lists. The other thing I tell people is, write yourself a note, a reminder. Pin it on the steering wheel of your car so it's the last thing you see before you go in the house. Do not bring my mood into the house, just like you would leave your muddy shoes at the doorstep. Literally, we can do that with the mood, but you have to be mindful about it.
Well, Gary, it is a great joy having you on the show. I'm in a great mood because I'm around you, but I won't act on it. Instead, I'll let you go and go to the commercial break, which is what I'm supposed to do. Gary, thank you so much for being here.
Great to be with you.
Therapy Thursdays on a Wednesday. Gary Direnfeld is an expert in family and marital therapy. That's a wrap on the show tonight. Don't forget to subscribe to the Last Show podcast. On it, you can hear entire evenings of this program for nights you couldn't listen, or hear select interviews that you loved. To find it, search David Cooper Last Show on your favorite podcast app. We'll pop up and you can click the subscribe button. I'm David Cooper, and this was not the last Show, because we'll be back tomorrow night.
There's a world where legends race across city skylines, romance blossoms in glittering ballrooms, and there's magic around every corner. It's a world known to many as Great Britain. You've seen the action on screen. Now visit the real star of the show. Visit Great Britain. To discover more, go to tripadvisor.com/Great Britain.